Thank you all for coming back. Councillor, are we ready to continue our proceedings?
Yes, we are ready to proceed.
Please go ahead.
Mr. Osek, could you kindly bring in the witness, please?
Thank you.
Mr. Darboe,
Yes, sir.
welcome back.
Thank you.
But, ready to proceed?
Yes, sir.
Good. Before the break, you are talking about the various meetings that took place, as a result of which you had to give a press conference. And that on the 7th of March, on the 7th of April, you decided to give a press conference. Rather, you had a meeting in which you decided that the members of the union would march from GTTI to Sitting Corner. And we talked about the issue of a permit, whether you have obtained a permit. And you indicated that your secretary who made the request could not hand over the request to any officer at the police station who would, at the police headquarters who would accept it. And she reported on the 9th. What happened after that? Proceed from there.
Yeah, it was on the 9th when we had our last meeting, and she reported.
We take it 9th of April, correct?
9th of April, right.
Proceed, please.
She reported that she could not issue the letter to the police as he was told by the officer that the senior officers in charge were not at work.
Did you people understand that all government institutions have records office?
Yes, we do.
And correspondence should be deposited at the records office, and they'll be obliged to accept it.
Yeah, that's why she said, the officer in charge said he was not the right officer to receive that, and she came back with the letter. On the 9th, when we came to have the last meeting, before then, another development unfolded.
Tell us about it.
It happened that the president of the Gambia College of Union, in the name of Alhagie Khan, visited the SOS for local government and lands forming Bikama on a different matter regarding the Gambia College of Union. And this issue of the looming student demonstration came in, and Mr. Bajo requested for intervention, that if he could facilitate that with the vice president through dialogue. And that was accepted for him to facilitate a dialogue between Gamsu and the vice president. Alhagie Khan informed the executive members, and we summoned this meeting on the 9th. When he reported, we accepted the offer that we decided to call off the demonstration and to engage the vice president.
Did you attach any conditions?
The condition attached is that the PIU officials would not be at GTTI. The students can assemble at GTTI. We selected the delegation that's supposed to go and meet with the vice president. The vice president provide mobility for the delegation, it's supposed to be led by the president.
Were these conditions put in writing?
Though it was verbally communicated to Mr. Bajo for eventual communication to the Vice President, and the response was that the Vice President had accepted all the conditions we put.
And those conditions were the PIU should stay away from GTTI area.
Exactly.
They should provide a vehicle for the delegation to be driven from GTTI to State House.
State House, yes.
And that the students must be allowed to stage a waiting area at GTTI itself.
At GTTI premises, and I should stay with the rest of the students at GTTI. Then after the meeting, then the delegation will come and brief the student there for us to be dispersed finally.
And on the 10th of April, before I ask that question, Mr. Juf, the president, then president of the student union, was he present there?
Where?
At this meeting of the 9th.
Yeah, he was there.
So he was fully aware.
Yeah, he was fully aware.
That the demonstration was to be called off.
Exactly.
And that day, that evening, did you, as a student body, inform the students that the strike or the demonstration was to be called off?
Yeah, the medium we use is through communicating to us through the leaderships, to the Gambia College, through the leader, for him to inform his student that it is called off, and those at GTTI, likewise. That's the medium we use, and then it was
Did
successful.
you announce it over the radio?
No, we did not announce the demonstration over the radio and the cancellation as well.
But the demonstration was well known among the students' body. Wasn't that the case?
Not actually, it was not well known.
It was not well known.
Yeah.
Okay. And equally, the cancellation too wasn't well known.
Yes.
All right. So tell us what happened the next day.
The next day, that was on the 10th, as agreed on, the executive members, that is the leaders who were identified, we told them to be on the ground as early as 8 a.m. so that the team can go and meet with the Vice President, and I should stay with the rest of the students who would converge at GTTI. At about between 7:30 to 8 a.m., I arrived and I met Mr. Juf, the president, and some executive members by the roadside opposite the GTTI gate.
Did you find any other students present there?
Yeah, I could remember Babukar Jonga was with him, and perhaps Alhagie Kamara.
How about the students who are not
There are
members
some
of the
students who
executive?
are not members of the executive were also behind them by the roadside.
About how many did you find?
Well, the number was not much. At that time, less than 50.
What happened after that?
Then after that, less than 30 minutes, the PIU officials also arrived.
At this stage, how many students were converged at that location?
Yes, still less than 100 when the PIU started arriving. Then when we saw them assemble and their officer in charge was trying to address them, we felt that they are prepared to disperse us.
Was he using any medium, any means to address the group?
When he was addressed, he was using a megaphone, trying to talk to them. And then it was at this point when Mr. Juf told me to go and talk to them about the development on the ground.
Do you know who this officer in charge was?
I do not know actually the name of the officer.
Did you approach the officer?
Yes, I attempted move towards them, but before I could reach,
Perhaps hold it there for a moment. Is it the case that on this day, during the morning, it was in fact the executive of the GAMSU who were bringing students down from buses?
that was a bus stop, and students were coming down, and Mr. Juf was announcing to them what the latest development was.
Did he, as far as you recall, inform the students that the demonstration was not going to go ahead?
Yes, that was the announcement he was making.
But did he also get the students to alight at GTTI?
For the students who alighted were informed that the student will be camped at GTTI when we've got access to the premises.
Okay, proceed, please. Then you walked towards...
Then I walked towards the PIU and then the PIU officials. The officer in charge now started making announcement that the students would disperse immediately.
How did you know that these were PIU personnel?
It is the uniform.
Could you describe to us the type of uniform they were wearing at the time?
Dark blue khaki uniform.
Proceed, please. Were they armed? If so, with what?
Armed with full riot gears, I could call it.
Did they carry any weapons?
Well, the weapon could be the trunket.
You mean the truncheon?
Truncheon, yeah, at that time there was no...
Did they carry any guns at this time?
They were not carrying gun at that time, yeah.
So proceed, please.
As I tried to approach them, this announcement started. And then they advanced towards us. I started to raise my hands to posture to them that we are here for peace, nothing else. To inform them about the latest development. Unfortunately, they advanced and they could not stop. As soon as they came, they passed me untouched. Behind me, they started beating and arresting the leaders and other students who were there. The case,
there was no conversation between you and them, apart from the announcement they made?
Apart from the announcement, I was telling them to stop. We are not here for demonstration, but then they were advancing and we are not listening to.
How many PIU personnel were there at that time?
It could be roughly up to 30.
And your group was of up to?
100
about
or less.
Hundreds or 100?
About 100.
About 100?
Yeah.
And then describe the scene that happened, that unfolded behind you.
Behind me, I saw they started beating the students, arresting Mr. Juf and others. And the other student who ran away, some through the cemetery, then it was not fenced, that is the J1 cemetery. Students ran across the cemetery, they were casing them, and some ran to GDI, the case, others towards the direction of Westfield or Jimpex. Unfortunately for me, the last guy did not spare me, hit me hard on my head until I nearly fell down, but I managed. And I managed and got to the roadside and leaned on a tree just near the cemetery. I was there for a while. Then when I gained consciousness, that was the time I got up again and then walked towards the highway.
Are you suggesting that there was a point in which you momentarily lost consciousness?
Yes, when I was managing to get to the tree, I was almost unconscious.
And what happened when you regained consciousness?
I go to the highway. Upon arriving, then I met with a pickup. I could see Darboe, the then president of the university's sub-union, was on board, and two girls were also picked together with me, and then we were on board the vehicle.
You were picked up. Were you
by
being
the
given a
PIU.
ride or you were arrested?
Well, it could be an arrest. We were arrested from that spot and taken to...
What was it? Was it an arrest or was it not an arrest?
It was an arrest.
Proceed, please.
We were arrested and taken to the PIU headquarters at Kanifing. Upon arrival, we were asked to alight from the vehicle rather. I think the worst came at that moment when they were hitting us from all directions, beating us.
Hitting you with what?
Their truncheons and then the gun boots this time round, because that was at the camp. They were PIU officers with guns. They were using that to beat us while we were managing, struggling to get into one of the offices that we were temporarily detained.
And from that beating, did you sustain any injuries?
Yes, I did. My head was swollen. Likewise, my face, my arms that I used to protect my delicate parts were all swollen.
How about the other people you were with?
I could believe they also underwent the same thing because they were taken before us. And then I could say what I experienced, they also underwent the same thing. While inside the room, they continued beating us with gun boots, up to the point when the SOS and 13 Baji came, he ordered them to stop.
Who ordered them to stop?
The SOS Interior Usman Baji.
Did they stop?
Yes, they stopped eventually.
And then what happened afterwards?
SOS now started asking us what happened.
You said two ladies were arrested together with you.
Yes.
Were they spared of the torture?
All the students on board that pickup, we were all beaten. Nobody was spared.
Were the ladies also rifle-butted?
Very well.
They were kicked as well?
Very well.
Did they sustain injuries?
Well, that I could not tell, but they were also mercilessly beaten.
And when Usman Baji came and ordered or requested that the beatings be stopped, what happened afterwards?
He asked why or what happened, and then Mr. Jub, the president, narrated what had happened from GT up to the PIU headquarters. And he concluded that the new oppositions were behind us.
What did you understand that to mean?
That means we were under the influence of the oppositions, or this thing was fueled by the oppositions.
Referring to who?
Well,
by the opposition, who was he referring to?
Well, that is whoever is in the parties that were opposing to the then ruling party.
Which at the time were?
The parties that were in opposition to the then ruling party were PDOIS, UDP, and NRP.
The suggestion was that you were being influenced by those political parties.
It don't mean some parties by name, but if you say oppositions, that is the understanding.
And that you were being influenced by them to disrupt or to create problems.
Exactly.
And proceed, please.
He said they will be arrested, charged, and dealt with accordingly. Then he requested that we accompany him to GTTI, where the other student leaders were, for us to go and then meet with the vice president at Banjul.
Did that happen?
That did not happen. As we were trying to board the vehicles, we had the students outside the PIU premises chanting the slogans, "Release our leaders. We need justice. We need justice," in the case of Ibrahima and that of Binta Mani.
How many students did you see in that group?
We were inside the premises, but it was a large crowd of students.
And as a result, what happened?
As a result, we dared not to go out, and the minister had no choice but to come to us. What we could do, we told him, unless you release us, we go out and talk to them. And he complied. We were released on that condition. We approached the student, told them that we are finally released. But they said they must still continue march to Westfield Johnson. We followed them up at around Westfield.
At what time of the morning did this happen?
But this could be around 10 a.m.
Proceed, please.
At Westfield, we succeeded in gathering them.
But at this stage, where was Mr. Baji, the SOS?
Well, when we left the PRC premises, we could not tell where Mr. Baji had gone. That was the last time I saw him.
Would it be safe to say that you left him behind the PIU headquarters?
Yes, that was the case.
Okay, proceed, please.
At Westfield, we succeeded in gathering them at the monument, and Mr. Juve, the president, was supposed to address them on the latest development and the need to disperse.
How many students would you approximate were gathered there?
Well, at that time, the number was too large.
1,000?
It will be less than 1,000, but can be close to 1,000.
Okay. Proceed, please.
Unfortunately, as he stood on the wall to address, I could recall in the scene the BBC then journalist or correspondent, the current Minister of Information, Ibrahima Silla, was supposed to cover. Then firing started. There was a military truck that stopped, and then they started firing in the air.
How do you know that this was a military truck?
Yes, it was a military truck, the green or light green in color, and I saw security officials in military uniform in the truck.
And as a result, you concluded that these were military personnel?
Exactly.
And
when that happened, then the student could not be controlled. Everybody now started running helter-skelter for our lives in different...
But at this stage, what type of bullets were being fired, as you know?
I will not attribute that to be live bullets.
So you believe they were blanks?
They were blanks, yes.
How do you know they were blanks?
Because firing was going on, I was not seeing anybody going down as well. Then when that happened, there were tear gases also. Then there you could see the students struggling with the tear gas, and I was one of those people who were affected by the tear gas.
Do you know who threw the tear gas?
It's the same security personnel. Here we have the MIS. The military officers were there, and then the PIU also were there.
Do you know which of those outfits was throwing tear gas?
The tear gas would be the PIU.
So this was a convergence of two forces, pretty much.
Exactly.
The military and the PIU. But as far as you know, we've established that the PIU was throwing tear gas.
Yes.
Initially, it was the military who was doing the firing. Do you know whether the PIU also fired guns?
At this point, the PIU were also in possession of guns. So I will attribute that both were involved in the firing.
So, but at this stage, it was only blanks, as far as you
Yes, as far
recall.
as I could tell, yes, it was.
Did you discern any differences in the noise emitted by the different types of bullets?
Well, I'm not an expert to do that.
Fair enough. But I thought perhaps maybe that was one basis for distinguishing the two types of bullets.
Well, as a layman, the outcome is the eventual result that we can determine whether it's live bullet or not.
Okay, but all right, fair enough. But at that stage, at Westfield, you did not see anybody go down?
No.
You did not?
Nobody went down at that moment. I was there struggling until at a gunpoint an officer came to me and asked me why.
Could you take that again? Could you take that again?
I was at a gunpoint by a military officer and asked me why I was there. I told him that I was a student leader. And he told me to leave the scene because it was not safe for me. I complied.
At this stage, where were the rest of the almost 1,000 students who were gathered there?
The students dispersed. They were all running for their lives.
They all scampered to
you
different
hardly
directions?
see any student there.
Okay, good. So,
And I also managed, I left the scene, headed towards the direction of GTTI.
when you realized that the students have all scampered to different directions, did you know where they went, the various areas they went to?
Along Kairaba Avenue, most of them went to that, along Kairaba Avenue, Brikama Highway, some through Ibo Town, and others along towards GTTI.
And what did you do?
I headed towards the direction of GTTI. On my way, I met with one of our executive members, that is Alhagie Camara. We went together. At Gimpex, we found a larger group of students there, now who were heading towards the PIU headquarters. And they were behind us. We could see the PIU also advancing. And I think that meeting point was where everything started.
Tell us about it.
The PIU could not stop the student force. At one point, they had to retreat back.
Why were the PIU retreating from the students?
While they were firing, the students were also stoning. I could still say that they were not using live ammunition. Now, at some point, the PIU now gained momentum.
Let me take you backwards a little bit. Back to the PIU headquarters, the early hours of the morning, when you were arrested and SOS Baji came there. At that point, did you hear any shooting?
When we went to the PIU headquarters, no, we did not hear any shooting.
What I'm saying is, at the morning when you were taken to the PIU headquarters, did you hear any shooting of any type of gun or of any type of bullets, for that matter?
Yes, I did say when we were coming out, we had the student chanting outside, and firing was going on outside.
Did you have any conversation with the SOS regarding that?
Well, he came to us. He was the one who came and told us, what can we do now? We told him that unless you release us, we go and talk to them.
Did you say anything about the firing?
And we told him for his men to stop firing, yes. His response was, an order has already been given.
Did he say whether he could do something about it or not?
Well, he did not say anything and did not
he
name who actually gave him the order.
But from that point up to the point you went back to GTTI area, you did not see any firing of live bullets.
Yes.
So tell us what happened from that point at GTTI end.
No, not GTTI, from Jimpex towards
Jimpex.
the police headquarters.
Yes, please.
I said, at one point, the PRU were retreating back to their camp, towards the direction of their camp. But at another, I could see that they gained momentum. And now it was the students who were running backwards.
Towards which direction?
The direction of Jimpex.
From where?
From the PRU headquarters point.
Okay, let's say either from cooperative or from GTTI.
Around that area, because that time the students were scattered all over. And then there we could see how the students were struggling running, and the firing was intensifying. It was at this point I saw students falling down. At the Babum Fadi Johnson, where I stood watching, I could see about 4 bodies down.
Take us through the events from Jimpex area until the point you reached at Babun Fati area.
Yes, from Jimpex, I said students were advancing from Jimpex end. Now they were stopped by the PRU, and then when firing intensified, the students were now running backwards.
Towards which direction?
Towards back Jimpex area. From the direction of cooperative area to the direction of Jimpex. Wherever you can head towards. I know others were heading the other directions. But where I was, they were heading towards the back Jimpex end. And
okay.
some could be the other direction, the other road, I don't know how you call it now, where you have Jul Brew.
Yes.
Yeah, some were heading towards that direction. It was this point where I saw about 4 students on the ground from the point I was standing.
And at this stage, you believed, what do you believe?
When I saw students running for their lives, then that was the time I realized that they were now using live bullets.
And you saw about 4 students go down?
Exactly. And
at what time, around what time of the day did this happen?
This could be around between 11 to 12.
Proceed, please.
When I saw that then a Red Cross ambulance was passing, I stopped it, directed them towards the direction of those bodies. I went there, picked them, and then transported them to Banjul.
How do you know that?
I saw them when they were picking them.
Proceed, please.
And from there, I was directed to Sankunsila factory that there were some students there. When I went there, they told me no, they were not there, that they were somewhere in one compound not far from the factory. I went to that compound. I found a good number of students who seek refuge in that compound.
At what stage did you arrive at Babun Fati Junction?
Not Babun Fati, Sankunsila.
You did mention...
Did I say Babun Fati?
Yes, you did mention...
Sankunsila Johnson.
Okay.
I'm sorry for that.
All right, so you went to Sankunsila factory looking for the students who you were informed were hiding there.
Yes.
They were directed to another home where the students were.
Yes.
So tell us what happened when you went there.
There, when we went, the landlady allowed the student to stay there, and then we stayed there. We were given water, food, and some of us, she gave us massage, local treatment, until in the evening, we decided to go to our various homes.
Proceed, please. Tell us how that happened, how
Well,
you managed.
For me, when I was going, I met with Alhagie Kamara and a girl from Bikama. on our way towards Babum Fati Johnson, we were told that some students were in one of the compounds. When we went there, we found it was Umar Juf and others, the president and some other student leaders, including Aliu Khan, Aliu Darboe, to recall. Then there, we discussed and agreed that now we should prepare what should come after. In order to do so, we should avoid mass arrests. We should avoid the Brikama Highway, as that could be a potential route to arrest the students. Then we decided to go on our own. I went back to the compound where I was in the afternoon and spent the night.
At this stage, did the student leadership know what has happened to the students?
Yes, they were there at Westfield. I believe, as I knew, that we saw some students were shot. That's my belief.
At this stage, you did not know how many?
No, we could not tell how many at that point.
Okay, proceed, please.
I managed to communicate to my family at Brikama, and they advised me to stay wherever I was, as the security or the police, not the police, the military police were in search for me. And then I decided to spend the night there.
And then what happened the next day?
The next day, on the 11th, at about 5 p.m., I still felt that I should get back home. I told the landlady that I thank her for the generosity she accorded to us, and that I will definitely go home. I headed towards the direction of Babum Fati Johnson. Upon arrival, I came across a military checkpoint, searching every vehicle and passengers.
At this stage, were you aware that demonstrations had also erupted in other parts of the country?
Yes, in the evening when I was in that compound, the news, the GRTS news, it was reported that there was demonstration in other parts in Brikama on the 10th. That was reported.
Would you accept, Mr. Students Gamsu Vice President of the time, that you lost control over the students at some stage in the demonstration of the 10th?
There was control over the student upon our arrival at GTTI. But the moment when the PIU came and attempted to disperse us, that resulted to loss of control over the students. At another point, when we reassembled them at the monument, we had control over the situation. But when the firing erupted again, as I narrated, then the situation went out of hand.
And that was when you permanently lost control?
Certainly.
So tell us about the events of the next day. You were at Babun Fati Junction around 5 p.m.
I felt that route was unsafe for me. I decided not to board the vehicle. I took the back route through Talending, Fajikunda, and down to Tabokoto.
On foot?
On foot. I boarded the vehicle at Tabokoto. Unfortunately for me, at Abuko, our vehicle was stopped because there was another checkpoint. All the passengers were asked to alight the car, including myself. We were escorted by an officer who led us to another point where there were a group of soldiers who were screening the passengers. I think the divine moment came for me. I managed to escape. I did not reach that point.
Was it the jujus or you just sneaked out?
Not actually. An hawker was passing, selling slippers. I pretended to be interested in buying the slippers, or rather finding a way to escape. And that was how I succeeded.
So it wasn't jujus, it was smartness.
Certainly.
And proceed, what happened after that?
I went through the agric camp. Then it was getting dark. Then behind the wildlife conservation, I walked up to Banjunindi.
I hope not through Abuko Nature Reserve.
Behind the nature reserve.
Okay.
Behind the nature reserve.
How come you knew the road so well?
Well, I had never been to that place. That was the first time to pass there. But out of imagination, I was trying to calculate the way to Banjulinde, because I knew where the upper basic school was. When I was able to locate the upper basic school, then I could find a way out.
Cut a long story short, you managed to finally escape and got home.
Not home per se. At Banjulinding, the police station, I was stopped, interrogated, and I told them that I was going to Yundum. They strictly warned me.
Did you tell them who you were?
I dared not to.
You did not have ID cards?
I left everything behind.
Good. Proceed.
They strictly warned me that it was dark, and I soon knew what the situation of the country was. At the airport Johnson, I found a similar checkpoint, this time military. Likewise, at the Army headquarters, at both points, I was seriously warned not to be at that area at that time of the night. Up to the airport fence Johnson, that is about Yundum. There I came across another security checkpoint, this time much larger. There were a lot of cars there. I decided not to attempt to pass through that. Then I came backwards towards the Coastal Road Johnson until I was able to get to Coastal Road Johnson. Took that highway up to the Islamic school. There is an Islamic school there. Then I branched down to Yundum, to my brother's home. I stayed for a while and then continued to Sumbala, where I stayed with my uncle. And I communicated to the family. They also advised that I stayed, Brikama was not safe for me. They were seriously looking for me.
Could you tell us what you know happened at your home as the soldiers were looking for you?
The information that I gathered was that on the day that is April 10th, they came to Darboe and they were asking for me. Nobody was telling them my whereabouts or my location, until eventually they came across one boy who refused to tell them that he had known my location. He was slapped and forced to board the coaster, and eventually he revealed my location, and he led them to my compound. They searched everywhere, threatened my family that they should reveal my location, but they insisted that they did not know my whereabouts. This continued for over a week. Any time of the day and night, they'll come, force them to open the house, search everywhere with guns. The family felt very threatened, and they were traumatized. I think That happened, according to them, that happened for over a week.
Did they only use soldiers in this operation?
Yes, soldiers, according to them, in Red Beret, and that is believed to be the military police officials in their military costa. But they also told me that the then July 22nd movement boys were aiding the soldiers for them to locate me.
Were these the Green Boys or July 22nd movement
It
boys?
was July 22nd movement that was later banned and then renamed as the Green Boys.
Good. So ultimately, this search stopped. Do you know why?
Well, I think, as I said, it went almost more than a week. And when there was no trace of me, they found it futile and then stopped.
But some students were arrested and taken to court, weren't they?
Yes, it happened one night when I was in Busumbala. I went to a telecenter, as I used to go at night and then communicate. I heard outside the telecenter people saying that they've arrested so and so leader. They named Aliu Khan, that Aliu Khan was also arrested. And then Babukar An was also arrested, likewise Seinabu Gay. And that the much wanted man was me. I'm the one at large. They didn't know that I was the one in the booth. And that was when I knew that some of my colleagues were arrested.
Do you know what eventually happened to them?
I only knew after the release. When I was in Busumbala and then there was an announcement of a GRTS that the court had ruled that all the students arrested should be released and that no students should now be arrested. As a group of lawyers stood in defense of the students, this include the current Minister of Justice and Attorney General, Batambedu, Usman Silla, Awasise Sabali, and then the current Speaker of the National Assembly, Mariam Jack Denton.
You must have been relieved.
I was very much relieved, and I did not spend that night at Busumbala. It was that night I went straight to Brikama.
After all this, did you come to learn about what had happened to some of your colleagues who fell at around Banjul breweries and Westfield area? Do you know what happened to them at this stage?
Yeah, from the narration that we were getting from each other, I think students were subjected to, as I said, there was shooting and a lot of students were injured, taken to Royal Victoria Teaching Hospital, admitted, and some students also died as a result. Those who were arrested were subjected to torture at the NIA. Some were taken to the police headquarters.
Let's talk about the death. Do you recall who died?
Well, the names that we gathered after the event through newspapers and then coroner's inquest, we recall Mohamed Lamin Jai, Mohamed Lamin Chun, Kalisco Prera, Uye Fode Mansali, Karamo Baro, Umar Baro. Umar Baro was a journalist, and Musa Sembeng and Babukar Baji. That is around the Greater Banjul. Outside the Greater Banjul, Brikama, there was an unidentified boy. And then in CRR Bikamaba, Seni Nyabali, and Usman Adin Sabali. These were the victims, if I could recall.
Well, extraordinary memory. You've recalled most of them. There is Bamba Jobate from
Bamba
Armitage,
Jobate was from Amtej,
Reginald Carroll.
originally from Bansang.
Yes, and Reginald Carroll.
Reginald Carroll also from Jesua.
That's right. How about the injured?
There were a lot of students who were injured, but the most serious ones that was widely covered by the newspapers would be Asan Suare was there, Yusuf Mbai, and Babukar Senghor.
Seni Senghor.
Oh, the Babukar or Seni? Or is Senghor?
All right, okay. Thank you very much. You also talked about some of your colleagues having been tortured. How did you know about that?
It is through their narration after their release.
Do you recall who was tortured?
But the student leaders included Babukar and the late, and Pa Alasan Sise.
Did they tell you that they were tortured?
Yes, they did.
But after all this, did you happen to come to discuss this with Yaya Jammeh?
Yes, I think after this, when Yaya Jammeh came back, there was another looming demonstration, which we tried again to go to the media, the radio stations, to talk to the student and then to tell the public that there was no planned demonstration. And it was as a result of that, the then president invited the student leaders at Kanilai. I could not recall the date, but it happened the day when he sworn in the members of the Commission of Inquiry set for that event. Then we went there, some Gamsu executive members, some students from the GDDI, and others from Gambia College. But we are not told what was the purpose of the invitation to the meeting with him. And among ourselves, we decided that we should not take the lead. He who invited should tell us why he is inviting us. If he fails to do that, we should not take the lead because we suspected that it could be related to April 10th. And let him specifically tell us that the meeting was surrounding April 10th, then there we can come in and discuss that matter. But in the event he fails to do so, we should not take the lead. We went there and he attended to us. In the meeting, the then NIA Director General, Keba Sisa, was present. Baba Job, the lead, was also present, and the then Chief of Protocol, Mr. Njai, I don't know whether Abdul Njai, but it was Njai, was also present.
Demba Njai?
Yeah, it's Njai, but the name specifically.
Okay, all right, no problem.
We are all present. Then the meeting was opened as usual by your tradition with prayers. And he asked, or introductions were made. Among ourselves, we decided that the chairperson of the advisory board of the Gambia College Sub-Union, Nakulan Sise, would chair the meeting if the chair should come from us. Then Nakulan asked us to introduce ourselves. which we did. It was at this point when the president said he was not happy with me. Jovially I asked, why? He said, I did not introduce him. Well, I apologized to him that it was not my responsibility to introduce him. That should have been the responsibility of the chairperson. But nonetheless, I apologize for that oversight. And Nakulang introduced him to the student that he was an ordinary member. He was conferred
Honorary member.
an honorary member rather of Gansu. That was after the Congress at the Gambia College. Immediately after the Congress, we went to Kanilai.
In 1999.
In 1999, we conferred that status to him as an honorary member of Gansu. So he said, Nakula introduced him as an honorary member. Then the meeting proceeded after the self-introductions. Well, he asked what our problems were. I found that not to be so specific. Sorry. As the head of the students, I decided not to take the lead as agreed on the issues surrounding the April 10 and 11. I took to be the problems as the administrative constraints in terms of mobility, logistics, and a place where the student secretariat could be housed. Because that was the request we made to him when we visited him in 1999. So I seek that opportunity to remind him for that. I felt I could realize that did not go down well with the president. He said, whether apart from that we did not have any other problem, I said, well, beside, I don't think so.
At this stage, where was the president of the student union?
Umar Juf was out of town. He was not in the country.
Who was acting in his place as president?
In the absence of the president, the vice acts as president. And that was myself.
Great. So how did that meeting conclude with Yaya Jammeh?
He said whether April 10 was not a problem. I said, yes, it was a problem. But that is beyond the problem of Gamsu. That's now a national problem. If that is what he is interested to know, we are very open and willing to tell him everything. He said he was interested to know. As planned among ourselves, we have planned where each and every speaker should handle. Where you are of faith in, you should handle that person to that point and stop. Somebody should pick from where you stop. I took the lead, narrated what happened from the very beginning, starting with the alleged murder of Ibrahima Bari and the rape of Binta Mani. Then others continued. Among the student leaders who spoke were Alhagie Kamara, the information secretary, Aliu Khan, the sub-union president, Gambia College, and Aliu Darboe, the sub-union president, UEP. At the end of our deliberations, the president asked why we didn't request an audience with him. We put to him that we made every effort to have an audience with him, to no avail. That he was the one who told us that anytime we want to see him on any issue, we channel it through his protocol or Baba Job. In fact, Baba Job was the main man. And Baba Job was right seated, and we told him, ask him, how many times we have been trying to have audience with you on this issue without success? He turned and they looked at them, heads went down, then he shook his head and concluded that this was as a result of communication breakdown. But he warned that we should be careful to the oppositions, and that we should also be careful to the people who call themselves lawyers, pretending that they were the one who struggled for the release of the students, that the students were released because of his wish, not the effort of any lawyers. That he is renewing his commitment to the support of the students. As an honorary member of GAMSU, he will always work with GAMSU. And he advised that as students, we should focus on our education and not to allow ourselves to be used by the oppositions.
Did you, at this stage, hold any other meetings with any officials?
Well, that was the last meeting we had with any state officials. Then after that, that was the day when the commission was sworn in.
Did you hold meetings with the NIA?
Yeah, after when the commission started, while the commission was on, I think around June, I was invited to the NIA with Babukar and the late Alhagie Kamara and Pa Alassane Cissé. There we had discussion on the incident and the way forward. It was put to us that the president was now willing to honor the promise he made, and that he would give us brand new vehicles. Maintenance and fuel will be provided for us, but on condition that we remove Omar Diouf as our president. And they expected an answer from me. I begged them move to the meeting to stand down for at least 10 minutes.
But did they also request that you do something else?
Yes, after removing Omar Diouf, for us to announce that Omar Diouf also is no longer our president. That was requested.
How did you react to that?
When I begged for the meeting to stand down, they agreed. We went down, had discussion among ourselves, and we agreed that we should not honor that conditional request. And how would we put it? I told them, let's wait until when we are there. We went up. Yes, what was the outcome of your meeting? I thanked them for extending that gesture of the president to us. I thanked the president for the kind gesture, but regrettably told them that the request cannot be granted. We made a request to the president unconditionally, and we expect if he should fulfill his promise, that should equally be unconditionally. Besides, Omar Diouf was not elected as president by us, he was elected by the Congress. And only the Congress has the mandate to remove.
And how did they respond to that?
Well, they said if there will be any possibility for us to convey Congress, I say yes. There is a provision for an extraordinary Congress to be conveyed. But at that time, there was a ban for partial, I will call it, for the upper basic schools and senior secondary schools to be part of GAMSU. And we feel if the union is amputated, we could not be in position at that juncture to call an extraordinary Congress unless we are on our right ship. I told them that it is possible only when that ban is lifted.
What did they do about that?
According to them, that was communicated to the then SOS for education. And they came back and told us that the SOS agreed that the ban is now lifted. That was the impression they gave us.
So in a sense, you're suggesting that they accepted to lift the ban temporarily such that you can hold an extraordinary Congress with the objective of removing Juve as president of GAMSU.
Yes. But I added, and when they said the SOS said the ban is lifted, I told them again that if we are to organize Congress, we need to go on tour of the schools to invite the schools and to disseminate to the students how they should comport themselves as far as the Congress will be concerned. And this request was granted at the point of the NIA. Now, at the point of the State Department of Education, we are told that we should apply for the permit. We did apply. Unfortunately, there was no one to appendix approval for the permit, only verbally told us that the permit is granted, but nobody dared to put it in writing.
But did the tour happen?
Well, we came back to the NIA and told them the situation that these people verbally said the permit is granted, but they failed to put it in writing. They said, fine, if that is the case, we are free to go. It all happened, they gave us vehicle with driver. We toured the country, went to selected schools throughout the Gambia, in all the regions. We dispatched the invitation letters for the Extraordinary Congress, informed the students, the POs, and the principal. We were told that the president would put the bill of the Congress, only to realize 2 days before the Congress that he said he would not put the bill of the Congress.
Did you hold the Congress eventually?
Yeah, we held the Congress through support from philanthropists. We were able to convert the students at the Gambia College, and we held the Congress.
What was the outcome?
The outcome was the students renewed trust and confidence in the leaderships and maintained the student leaders to remain the rest of the terms. And then we had 1 year to go.
Omar Juve
and Omar Juve
president.
Still maintained as the president, and in his absence, his vice can act, but he still remains as the president.
So the efforts to remove Omar Juve as president failed?
Woefully.
Of course, other activities happened later on in commemoration of April 10th and 11th, but we would not go into all those things. Ultimately, you went to university, correct?
Yes, that was of late, around 2007.
And then what happened?
Well, before 2007, I could have gone much earlier. But because of the stigma, or I will call the stereotype on me, I was...
What was the stereotype on you? How were you perceived?
I was perceived as the brain behind the whole thing. I was perceived as a troublemonger. I was perceived as an opposition. I was branded in every form. So my association with students, I did as much as possible to avoid that interaction with students anymore. That delayed for me to get to the university. At one point, I felt it was necessary I should go. Along the way, I found the atmosphere very uncomfortable for me.
What happened that made you feel uncomfortable in that environment?
At university, I perceived that there should always be academic freedom. But here, at one point, I did not see that. My involvement in lectures, I came across that I was in the university with students who were at the same time intelligent officers. I was doing it undercover. But later, I did realize that I am now known to be what I was, the Alhagie Darboe of Gansu. At one lecture, when I actually realized my insecurity there, the late Dr. Tal Sajatal was having lectures with us. It was an evening lecture around 8 p.m. The next day in the morning, he reported that he could not know the type of student that he was dealing with in the university. That matters of lecture that he had in the class was taken to State House, and he was called up in. This, I concluded what actually he meant, the type of students that were in the university. And after then, I was advised to distance myself from student activities. And I could not do that if I still continue to be in the university. I took a deferment, only not to be returned to pursue and complete my courses at the university.
Well, you promised me that you're going to go and continue and get your degree finally.
I was waiting for this defined moment that seeing me with a student should not be a threat to any government. I am a citizen that is committed to development of this country, but not in any point involved in any act that is going to destroy this country.
So finally, you have made up your mind you would go back to university and complete your degree.
Yes, I do.
I have no further questions for the witness, and Mr. Chair, we remember to give him a few minutes to give his concluding remarks after your questioning. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, my counsel, and thank you very much, Mr. Darboe, for a very detailed and lucid testimony.
Thank you.
From your demeanor and comportement, you don't look threatening at all, unless you camouflage intellectual troublemaking, which I think is a credit the circumstance that you lived and what you had gone through in April, especially 2000. But thank you so much, for a very good testimony. Commissioners, if you have any questions, please indicate. Commissioner Jallo, Imam Jallo, you have the floor, please. Start on the left.
Witness, I noticed that throughout your deliberations, you never involved the Ministry of Education or the Regional Education Office, Western Division. Do you have any reasons for this? Because notice, when you came to the tail end of your deliberation, you are referred back to the Ministry of Education. And that seemed to solve the problem halfway. But why didn't you do it in the first instance?
It could be recalled that the letter of demand that we sent to the IGP was copied to the PS, the State Department of Education at that time, in that they were involved.
I realize there is a difference between copy and an original letter to the Ministry of Education, because the Ministry of Education would not dare respond to a letter copied to them.
Well, administratively, that could be right. But as responsible authorities, if you see such a correspondence, it should be a cause of concern to any administrator. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Deputy Chair, you have the floor, please.
Thank you very much for that impressive testimony. But what I want to know is, at the end of your term of office, after the extraordinary meeting, General Assembly, what happened to GAMSU?
I think that the GAMSU, there was a point that I left behind, the lead council, if I could.
Please go ahead.
Yes, that is before our term ended, the first anniversary of April 10, 2001 was marked the first anniversary of the event. As president, we organized that commemoration, requested, permit was granted, police escort. We marched from Westfield to GTTI. And GTTI, we had speakers in the hall. The student and security officials were involved there. And I gave a solemn speech on the outcome and the action of the government on the Commission's report. I condemned the brutal killing, torture, and injury meted on the students. I expressed my total disappointment to the position of the president for failing to honor his promise that we leave everything in the hands of the report and he will make sure no stone is left unturned. But the reaction on the report left no stone turned. I called on the need for justice to be done, that to call for reconciliation is only possible and meaningful when justice is not only done, but is seen to be done. I've called for compensation to the dead and the injured students. And I prayed to the departed souls to rest in peace. I pray for the injured, a speedy recovery. This was a powerful speech that I did not write. I dare not to write. The written one will be taken from me. After I was spared, but Alhagie Bali, before he reached home, he was arrested. I went back to my posting at Badari in URR. When my term ended, I organized Congress. A new executive was elected. When I was in Badari, this coincided at a time when the NAIC of 2001 was organized at Basse. I could recall it was at this NAIC the president invited the head boys and head girls from all the upper basic schools and senior secondary schools to accompany him to grace the opening ceremony of the NAIC. We made to understand that it was from there a parallel student association called NAPSA was formed. And when that happened, as planned earlier on, initially they planned that all the upper basic schools and senior schools would no longer be part of GAMSU. Now, because I said we could not go for Congress, they lifted that, and now this was implemented. This parallel student association came, and it was a parallel association against GAMSU. After one term, I think the second term, the executive that followed us, after their term, the third one that was Alhagie, there was that confrontation between the two, and eventually GAMSU could not continue. It was NAPSA that remained to exist as student organization or association in the country.
Very much.
Thank you. Commissioner Carr, you have the floor.
Thank you, Chairman. My first question is regarding the reason why the then government wanted you to vote Mr. Diouf out as president. I'm not sure if you've explained it. Perhaps you did and I missed it, but I just wanted clarification on that.
They will not tell us the reason. But what I told my colleagues is that that was an attempt to divide us. Whatever the case could be, Mr. Diouf was from the university. And university is a very strong component as far as unionism is concerned. If we remove him, we will anger that section of the union, and we will be divided. When we divided, we will not be strong and will fall eventually. That could be the reason.
Thank you. My second question is, you mentioned that you were advised to desist from student politics. Can you tell us who gave you that advice?
Well, these were security advice. I think, in as much as I was infamous, but equally I was famous, a section of the population also embraced me. I was lucky to have insiders who used to give me that kind of advice. I think that was how I saved the brutality of Yahya Jammeh.
After you left the university, did the security forces continue to monitor you? Do you know if they continued monitoring you?
I was continuously under surveillance until the day when Jammeh left.
My final question, and this you can include in your closing remarks, because we have something in parallel, which is youth activism. You have been a youth activist for long. I've been a youth activist for long. And something, too, that I think stands out in your resume is that you have been a politician. And here in the Commission, we have a Never Again campaign that targets young people. Part of that is to include them in the political development of this country. I'd like to hear your perspectives on that. Or how do you think we can engage young people in the political affairs of this country as part of our Never Again campaign? Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Kinte.
Honorable Darboe, some witnesses here indicated that the then commander of the army, Babukar Jatta, was being escorted from Ipakunda all the way down to the PIU. Were you aware? And some of them, he suddenly disappeared. And in fact, by those versions, then the shooting had not started. Can you please throw some light on it if you know anything about it?
I was not coming from that direction. I did say earlier on I was coming from the direction of GTTI. So I could not tell exactly what was happening from that end.
With the students up to PIU, are you aware of any incidents around that moment? Because I understand it was there shooting started.
Yes, I heard so, but what I'm saying is that I was at the other end. I could realize that these two groups converge, but we were at the other end, that is the JIMPEX end.
Mr. Darboe, please. You said you were arrested and taken to the PIU camp. It was the minister's intervention that got you released. And the purpose of releasing you was to come and calm the students. So it's around the PIU.
If you listen very well to the narration,
Yeah.
from the PIU, we followed the student up to Westfield,
Fine.
and we succeeded in converging them at the monument. But when firing started, the students scattered. They went to different directions. Some towards Karaba Avenue, Serekunda, Brikama, Jimpex N. I took the direction to Jimpex N.
So you could not say anything about
the other end.
Babukar and the team?
Exactly.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
In addition to that, Mr. Chair, perhaps it's all a matter of timing. The time he was arrested and taken to PIU was early in the morning. There was no shooting yet. It was just the PIU guys harassing the students at GTTI. That was around 9 a.m., according to his testimony. So by the time he was released, it was around 10 a.m. And this is precisely the reason why we juxtaposed his testimony with time, because the timing is important. See, and students were scampered or going in different directions. So he could only testify about where he was, what he saw. Cannot testify about what happened to Babukar Jatta in other directions. But we would come to all that with other witnesses. Thank you very much, Mr. Chair.
Thank you for that clarification, Counsel. Mr. Darboe, if you have any closing remarks to make, please proceed to do so now.
Thank you very much. At this juncture, as I did say in the National Assembly, when this bill was laid before us, that this was the day I prayed as I deliver my speech at DTTI, that out of frustration, I took history as the judge, that one day the culprits are going to be judged accordingly, and justice will not only be done, but it will be seen to be done. It was my belief that will not happen when change had not been effected, and that change happened. And the bill came when I was a member of National Assembly. I thank God for God had answered to my prayers. And I thank God that I am here to give the accounts of the incident of April 10 and 11. I thank God that my prayers have been answered, that I've given the full account. It is my ardent hope that our dream would be realized, that justice will be done in the April 10 and 11 incidents, and then the victims, dead and injured. Yes, we cannot get the lives back, but definitely they deserve to be compensated. Those who need treatment very badly, physically, mentally, or emotionally, we look on to the Commission to do so. And to Gambians at large, as I've been putting anytime we gather the students, we take April 10 and 11 as a lesson for all of us, for the government, that the government should take the citizens seriously and their concerns. They should rule in accordance with the ethics of good governance. The rights of citizens should be adhered to. We cannot keep on saying that we want to keep peace and security when we look on the other side not to see that justice is taken into account. On school authorities, the school authorities should not lose the grip in trying to administer proper administration in schools. Students should comport themselves, obey the school rules and regulations. Parents should take the parental responsibility to make sure our children are controlled and they are brought up to live in any society. I said these were lessons. Security should not comport themselves in a manner in which when the citizenry see them, they should feel threatened, but rather when we see them, we should feel secure. I did not see that as far as, I'm sorry to say, our security, especially those that are to keep what they call the crowd control or rioting here and there. I think this is what they should feel, that as soon as they appeared, the citizens should feel insecure, rather to feel being threatened. I want to believe, in as much as they should be sent for crowd control, they should be trained adequately to what extent or degree they apply whatever force they should have to control such crowd. As politicians, I'm lucky to be part of them now. It is our solemn responsibility to nurture good governance, to preach and speak, but at the same time try to demonstrate. We cannot demonstrate only by action, but we can demonstrate by the tune that we speak, the language we speak, as our followers listen or look onto anyone but we the politicians. These are the lessons, and I want Gambians to see Trrc not for witch hunting. It is meant to establish the truth. We can only reconcile when the truth is established. And when the truth is established, those who are found wanting or to be offending should accept, so that reconciliation is possible and meaningful. But if you are showing your reluctance to accept the findings of the Trrc, reconciliation will be very difficult. I also want to add the exercise of Trrc should not go futile. After the submission of your report, the government should act on the report accordingly. It should not be the Felix Latte Commission. The President promised us that he will leave no stone unturned, and yet he did not make any stone turn. I believe the outcome of this Trrc, the stones will be left unturned. On that note, I thank you all.
Thank you very much, Mr. Darboe, for coming to assist us in establishing the impartial record of what happened in this country between 1994 and 2017. Thank you for the testimony.
Thank you.
And we will meet again tomorrow, continue our proceedings at 10 o'clock sharp tomorrow morning. Meeting is adjourned.
Thank you.
Thank you.